Pretty good. How about you?
Yeah, I'm a little, if I sound nasally, I'm getting over a something. I've got like this weird cold cough thing that just won't go away. So yeah, if I sound nasally and if I cough, apologies in advance. I'm gonna try not to cough. All right, well, it's 7 o'clock. Or 7 o'clock UK. I'm conscious of everyone's time, so I'm gonna get started if that's okay with everyone. I don't have many slides. There's a few things I want to show before we get into using Palladio to set up an email template, more like housekeeping-ish type things. Ooh, I probably shouldn't show that. That was my one password up. Oops. Anyway, so I've got a few slides I want to just run through real quick, just to talk about kind of conceptually why I ended up building Palladio and kind of a bit about how email platforms like ConvertKit actually create emails, because it's actually really important to understand how that works. And then I'll get straight into things. I'm just going to ask too, if you could just keep your audio on mute unless you have a question, just so there's no background ambient noise. Cool. All right. So if that sounds good to everyone, I'm gonna have the chat open, just in case you want to nudge me and you don't want to speak up, but you can speak up. I mean, it's cozy enough. We had 144 people RSVP, but so far there's only like 25-ish here, so it's not too big. Okay, cool. So let's talk about kind of the big question that I get a lot from people when they're considering, they see emails like mine, they're on Jay Klaus's list, they're on Justin Moore's list, they're on soon Sahil Bloom's list, and they're seeing these emails that don't exactly look like either a default ConvertKit template or something that's doable in ConvertKit. So one thing leads to another, and eventually they find out that this tool called Palladio is behind it all. And the big concern that most people have is around what they've been told by people, which is that plain text emails work better, or simple, I should say, rich text emails work better. And to be honest, I believe that for quite a while until I started testing. And what I want to try to do quickly is just give you a quick overview of why I think if having a more designed, more structured approach to email marketing is generally a good thing. Hopefully I'll make some convincing arguments, and then I'll get into all the fun stuff, which is going to be using the tool and showing you how my workflow for creating templates and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so my big thing is, like most of you probably, I want more people reading and engaging with my emails. I have enough people now using Palladio that I can confidently say that there is pretty much zero impact on email deliverability, and by that I mean open rates. When people, whoever's got audio on, can you please just mute yourself? So typically there's no change with open rates when it comes to going from like the classic email template or something in ConvertKit to a Palladio template. So that's the initial argument that most people have. But then the question of, well, don't like more plain emails look more authentic and all that kind of stuff? That's usually then the next question. So I want to cover 3 reasons why I think having a more designed and more structured email approach is generally better. So the first reason is digestibility. And by that, I mean, if you look at the left of the screen, this is a scientific paper. I just went on Google Images and found the first thing that came up. But usually these are very like research grade things that the only people who read these are fellow scientists, and they're dense and they require a lot of focus and so on and so forth. On the right, you have something out of Popular Science, which I would call like a airport science article, which is meant for people probably who are like waiting for a flight and they go to the shop and they buy Popular Science and they're browsing and they're kind of skimming over stuff, and they're interested in science, but they're not scientists like the people who would read the thing on the left. And where I'm getting with this is that people's inboxes are busy. There's no one has enough time. And The problem is newsletters are getting more complex. People are saying more things. They're including things like sponsors. They're including multiple calls to action, lists of like cool Twitter threads and all this stuff. And a lot of these emails are ending up as like these giant, massive Google Doc looking things that are really hard to parse. So my biggest argument for why design and structure is probably a good thing is the fact that it's easy, it's more skimmable, it's sectioned, you can just do a lot more than you can with like, bolding and italics and plopping an image in and stuff like that. So that's my first argument. Does anyone know who's unmuted, by the way? Just so I can mute them. I just keep hearing stuff as I talk.
There's a few there. I see.
Not to call anyone out.
Casey Proctor.
Cool. Yeah. If I don't know if there's a way for me to just wholesale mute everyone, but yeah, you could just mute yourself. That'd be awesome. Thanks. Okay. So the first is that digestibility, which is just basically, like I just said, with all that goes into a lot of emails these days, having just simple text makes it really hard to parse what's going on in an email. The second reason I think is structure. So if you look at Justin Moore, his emails that he sends out, this is just me panning through one of his emails. And there's so much going on. He has video or live streams. He's got a thing about craft and commerce, the ConvertKit conference. He has like a referral, like when you refer people, you'll get this unlocked. Just so much is going on in this email. And especially a lot of newsletters are turning into this kind of style thing where you have so much stuff going on. And what's really nice about what Justin's done is he's added a lot of really nice, elegant structure to his standard email template. If you compare it to what he used to have, which is on the left, he used to just use nested bullets to try to convey these are the different sponsorship opportunities. So reading this was like looking at like a university student's like lecture notes, right? Like it's just a bunch of nested stuff. And when I was talking to Justin about this and trying to help him, get set up with Palladio, I was thinking like, you wouldn't go to a job board, maybe Craigslist, I know, but I kind of think they're intentionally dated, but you wouldn't go to a modern job board and expect something like the left, right? You'd expect something like the right, where you have boxes, and these boxes have outlines, and they have like a little logo of a brand, and they have a big button and that kind of thing, right? So I think, I know not all of us have a lot of structure like what Justin might have, where he's, showing different sponsorship opportunities. But when you think about like calls to action or here's everything I have on offer type thing, or whatever else, that's, in my mind, a prime opportunity for introducing really nice structure, which actually ties nicely into the last point, which is branding. So, here are some examples of people who are using structured or designed and structured email templates. And when I get an email from them, I know exactly, I know immediately who sent it. With the one on the left, Arvid, I know it's him because obviously there's his logo, but just the look and feel of it is obviously part of the brand. And if you go to the website, it usually matches that. And you just have this nice brand cohesion, which you just don't get when it's just a rich text email where, it's just a blob of text. Like I know you and I and we tend to put a lot of thought and stuff into what we write. And we obviously are very near and dear to our own email lists. But as a serial newsletter subscriber, I get emails all the time from people who like do the whole like from friend to friend email approach, where it's like, hey, Brennan, blah, 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 and then the person's name at the end. And I honestly, more often than not, forget, like, think, who is this person, right? Like, I don't remember how I ended up on your list or what you do or whatever else. So I think it's important to have some sort of brand cohesion. So that's really my three real kind of key reasons for why I think you might want to consider having more design and structure with emails you send. And if you have any other ideas or thoughts on why, even if it's a contrarian thought, I'd love to hear it maybe at the end. But before I start getting into the using of Palladio, and I'm going to have Q&A at the end, But that being said, if you want to chime in, you really want to get into something here now, we can do that too. But at the end, I have baked in time for any questions you have about if you've used Palladio before and you've gotten stuck, I'm here to help, or whatever else. But before we get into the actual usage of the tool, it's really important to understand how email platforms, email service providers like ConvertKit actually send emails, because this is something that a lot of people just I don't think fully wrap their head around how it all works. So let's say you're going into ConvertKit and you go to the broadcast tab and you create broadcast. Like, what is actually happening? Well, what's happening is you are authoring what's called the email content. Same thing happens if you go and set up an email in a sequence. And the email content itself isn't actually the full email. The full email is the email template, which every email in ConvertKit needs a template associated with it. The email content gets wrapped by it. So it's very similar if you've ever done used WordPress or whatever. You have like a page template. And then when you create a page or a post, it's kind of the same thing. It's kind of, it's wrapped around the template. Now, the big issue with this is that these wrapping template bits are where we want to put things like our logo at the top or our signature. And then we want to also add things like a little sponsored by blurb under our logo, or we want to have like a really dialed in, tailored call to action up, maybe above or below our signature. And then this gets tricky because now you're saying, well, this is part of my template, not the actual email I'm writing. So how does an email affect or modify the template that wraps around it? Using a platform like ConvertKit in their interface, in a vanilla way, you can't do that. But as I dug into wanting to create this tool and getting into the internals of how ConvertKit actually ticked, I realized you could actually affect it by the way that they handle liquid templating. So liquid templating, not to get too deep in the weeds, is anytime you write an email in ConvertKit, when it actually gets sent to a user, the data about that user and any context from the template or the email and vice versa is all kind of put in a variable pot, if that makes sense, or a pot of variables. And then you can actually do stuff with that. So why that's interesting is you can actually say, if I'm writing a broadcast, I can say, hey, I want to set a variable in liquid that is going to be the name of the sponsor, which in this case is Palladio. And that's actually up in the template, that's wrapping this email. So I want to change that. And that's one of if I would say the secret sauce of what I've built with Palladio is that functionality where you can set up these variables that are ways that an individual email can affect and change everything around it. And that's why when you see, if you're on like Jay Klaus's list and you see below his logo, the sponsor block, or, with Justin Moore, or any of these people I just mentioned, that's how they do all this. That's why their emails look so consistent and so polished and structured, because we're basically just exploiting this liquid thing, which Palladio handles for them. But that's actually what's happening under the hood. And that's something that if you were to just create an email template from scratch in ConvertKit itself, using, say, their template editor, you couldn't really do this at all. Andrew, the snippet tool in ConvertKit, the widget, excuse me, the widget functionality in Palladio does use content snippets under the hood, but what I just mentioned now doesn't. That's actually another, I should have actually put that in the illustration here. Within the yellow bit, and even within the blue bit, the template bit, you can actually include content snippets. So in ConvertKit specifically, you can add content snippets in your template and in your email content itself. And when you use that all creatively, like what Palladio does for you, you can do some really interesting stuff, which I'll show you about in a second. Cool. All right. So that's all I wanted to cover, kind of high level. I'm going to get into the tool now. But I want to show you, before I build the tool, I want to show you my create and sell template. So if you're on my email list, which you probably are if you join this, this is the actual Palladio template that I use for my emails. So this might look a little weird at first. What you're seeing here, these little curly brackets, are that liquid stuff that I mentioned. But basically what this does is ultimately what it renders as is these things where I have a mixture of static content, like my logo at the top, dynamic content, like this quote that changes every week, a initial headline, a intro area, a list of what's going on in this edition, a secondary headline, secondary subheadline, the actual meat of the article, right? So this is where I do most of the content of the email. And then my signature, which is static, a dynamic call to action, which is based on you, and then a static footer, which has stuff about email preferences and stuff. So you'll notice that there's a lot of what I just mentioned, a lot of things, some things that are static and some things that are dynamic. And that's one of the really things that frankly is sometimes hard to wrap your head around initially with Palladio, is this idea of like some content that I'm putting into Palladio is stuff that will always be there. Like my logo will always be there. I could change it, but that then means I'm going to go into Palladio and re-export the template and bring it back into ConvertKit. But then you have dynamic stuff, like we have the intro quote, the intro headline, the intro content, and all that kind of stuff. And I'll get into how I use all that later, but I just want to kind of make that, like, hopefully that kind of makes sense. I know I get it. It might be a little confusing at first, but as we get into the building of a from scratch template, that's going to be a lot simpler than this one. Hopefully it'll make quite a bit of sense. Cool. All right. So let's go back to that test one that I created. Okay. So when you get into Palladio for the very first time, you're going to be faced with a list of starter templates. So I'm going to use the basic one because I don't want to actually start with much. I want to start kind of blank and show you my process for starting from scratch. But if you do end up using Palladio, you can actually go and grab like Jay Klaus's template and tweak it and make it your own, or James Clear's template, or Jason Zook's template, not Jason Zook, or Indie Hackers, or any of these different things. But let's talk about what I'm going to actually try to do on the fly. So I'm going to create a template, a newsletter template that has a few things that it's going to have in it. It's going to have a logo at the top. I want to be able to share a weekly update at the top also. I want to dynamically, if they're a customer, I want to have a little blurb that'll show every week. That's maybe a little colored box that says like, hey, thanks for being a customer. Just an added bit of personalization that I don't need to think about. This will be part of my template, so it'll always show. So people who are not customers won't see it. People who are will see it. I want to optionally, if I have a sponsor for the week, then I'm going to have a little box showing sponsored content. And then I want to show the meat and potatoes of the email, like the actual content of the email. And then in that content, I'll get in. I'm not going to talk too much about widgets tonight because that's a whole another workshop I want to host. But I want to potentially show you how we could add a little highlighted box in the middle of our content. And then I would have a closing signature and a footer. So this is probably kind of standard. You could obviously add a lot more depending on what kind of newsletter you run. But what I want to draw your attention to before we get it back into Palladio is when I think through this, I think, okay, what is actually changing and what isn't? So the logo is static. That does not change. The weekly update, obviously, that's going to be dynamic. Thanking customers, that could be dynamic one day, maybe every week. I change that up, but for now, it's just going to be static content that every week it'll say the same blurb to returning customers. Sponsor call out obviously will be dynamic because that'll change week to week. The main content obviously is going to be dynamic. And then the stuff at the bottom, footer, signature, that'll be the same every week. Okay, so this is kind of how I conceptualize things. First, I'm not going to do this tonight, but usually I would then break out like a sketch pad and start mocking up what I want it to look like. I've actually started using Figma quite a bit to do this too. So then I'll go into Palladio. I'll create a new workspace. So with Palladio, when you have an account, you can create an unlimited amount of workspaces. So a workspace, think of that as a newsletter, or not a newsletter, an email setup. So, I have Palladio, I have create and sell, and I have double your freelancing. So those are 3 different email setups that I have that have different branding and different looks and all that kind of stuff. So with your account, you can create as many as you want, and they're all kind of siloed from each other, which is really nice. Okay, so we're going to choose a basic template that isn't going to really do much. And then I'm just going to call this test template and click create new. Okay, so when you get into Palladio, for those who have not used it before, I tried to model it a lot like a traditional kind of web page builder. So if you've ever used, nowadays it's like Webflow, but back in the day it was Dreamweaver, or any of these kind of, I think WordPress has a bunch of these kind of page builders too. The idea is what you see is what you get in the middle. And the left side is like all the stuff, right? The hierarchy of elements. And then on the right is the ability to change and tweak different things depending on what you're, what you click on. So we already have a logo in place, so I'm not going to really change anything there. But I want to make sure that I have, what did I say I want to do first? I want to have a sponsor call out, right? Oh no, I want to share the weekly update. So one thing that I've done before you guys joined is I added some colors. So I'm a big fan. If you've ever seen this website called Coolers, what they are is it's pretty cool. It's a really nice way to create color palettes with their generator, and then you can have like complementary colors and all this good stuff. Which, if you're like me and you're horrible at making colors work together, really like this website. Another one is Happy Hues, which isn't a generator like the Coolers is, but they just have a lot of really nice like brand type things of like, here's a nice, like you can use this background color and then use this as headlines, use this as paragraph text. So both of these websites are really nice. And then what I did is I just went in and I added some color palettes to my brand settings for this workspace. So I used this setup here to, for this brand here. And then what else? I've left the fonts as is. But yeah, so that's that. And then let's get back to building the template. So I want to have a call out for the weekly update. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a container. So everything in Palladio is drag and drop. So I added a container, and a container is like a box. Default going to be transparent. It's not going to look like anything. But I want to have the background of this. So on the right-hand side, when you click on anything, you have all the properties. So background color is one of them. And you could also, Adrian, you can use Google Fonts too. So I meant to actually show this. I might at the end show this, but I also like this font pair website where it shows you really good Google fonts that pair together. So in that brand settings, you could actually add, I'll do that real quick, actually. Why don't I do that? So quickly, I'm going to go back here. I am building a newer way of handling this, a better way of doing these fonts here. But basically what I'm going to want to do is I will pick, let's do Oswald and Source Sans Pro. That looks good. So my primary font will be, I'll just do Source Sans Pro as the primary. And then I usually like to use the secondary font to be headlines, which is Oswald. Is it Oswald, right? So I load these in. I click the little globe next to it to make these, to indicate that these are Google fonts. And there's some settings over here or stuff over here that tells you how that works. But again, a new interface for this is coming. It'll make it a lot better. So now that's in. So now when I go back to my template, it's now using Google Fonts. You can actually see that here. You can see that this, I guess, is Source Sans Pro or whatever that font is. Okay, so we want to have a little weekly update. So I'm going to have this box here. I'm going to make the background color. Let's do this teal and maybe have it be like 20% opacity. And then I'm going to drag out some like a paragraph node, which is text. And we'll say weekly update. And then under the weekly update, we'll actually have, this is the weekly update. Okay, so it'll look something like that, right? You can mess around with things like padding and margin. And I mean, it's too much to get into, honestly. I don't want to bore you, but there's so much you can do with like just tweaking stuff like adding top margin, or I could add a drop shadow to this, maybe a nice little drop shadow, which will then make it look like that. So I have a little weekly update area. So after I've done that, I wanted to do a customer kind of appreciation thing. So I'm going to add another container. This one, I'm going to give it some top padding. So let's give it, 50 pixels from the thing above it. And we'll make this red and a light red, so 10%. And then we'll put something like, whatever we want to put. Thanks. Oh, can't type. Thanks for being a customer. Now we've got that. But now we need to make this conditional. So we only want to show this to actual customers, right? So I'm going to add a show if above it. Actually, I'll put it under it. And then I'm going to drag this entire thing, this container, this red box, and just plop it right in here. Sometimes it's a bit finicky. So I'm going to delete the thing that it came with. And now what we're saying is if they're tagged customer, which in preview they're not, then they will see this box. And what's cool is what you can do is when you preview an email, you can actually go and let me actually do this real quick. I don't know if I've done this. I'm going to make, this is my test account, so I don't really have anyone in it. I'm going to say that me plus full name is a customer. So I'm just going to add the tag of customer to this person. So now when I'm testing this, I can actually preview this up here and put in me plus full name, put that email address in and say test customer. And then I'm going to add the other one, which is just me at print and done, which is not a customer, as my non-customer test. So me at print and done is non-customer. Yeah, I don't usually use tags. This is my quick and easy preview thing. Okay, so if you're a customer, you see thanks for being a customer. If you're not a customer, you see that. So it becomes really easy to be able to say like what, because you can basically add, like I just showed you, these conditional blocks, which what this is doing actually is it's writing liquid code for you. So the only way you could do this in ConvertKit would be to go and add and write liquid code that might break your email. It requires you to know how liquid works. With Palladio, you can actually just visually drag it out and say, hey, when this is true, and then I can actually change all this here. So like, let's say their tags contains, and there's all the tags I have, or custom field equals a certain thing. Yeah, so we're just checking to see if they're tagged customer, and then we will show that. So now we have this. So we're getting there, right? We have, now we need to add a sponsor area. So same thing here. We're going to do a show if, because we don't always have a sponsor. And what I want to do here, because what you're starting to see is conditions can't have margin above and below it, because conditions are kind of in line. So what I'm going to need to do is go to this red box and add some padding below it here. And then when I add a thing in, the sponsor call out, I'll change it here. For the sponsor, I'm just going to say today's edition is sponsored by name of sponsor. So I'm not actually making anything dynamic just yet. I'm going to do that at the end. So my flow is typically, I get it to look the way I want, and then I go and wire up all the dynamics things when I'm done, when I'm ready to use it. Okay, so we have that. We have the main content, which is the default content, which is part of every email template by standard. So this is actually when you go into ConvertKit and you write stuff in an email, what you see here is where that gets, replaced. Cool. All right. So I'm not going to get into the signature and footer stuff yet, because that's just more of the same of what I've been doing, and I don't want to waste time. So hopefully this kind of makes sense. Now I'm going to make this dynamic, unless anyone has any questions they want to get me to stop at and cover. Again, the interface with all the settings and stuff on the right, there's a YouTube channel for Palladio where I'm publishing videos to it that get into the details of all that. But basically, it's the easiest way to do it is to kind of play with it. and say, oh, what can I do? I can change the background color. I can put an image as a background. I can change the text color. I can add a border. I can make the border a radius. I can have rounded corners and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, because if you've used ConvertKit's built-in stuff like that, they have some abilities where you can have you can change a text color and stuff like that, but you can't do things like add a shadow and add exactly 5 pixels or 8 pixels of margin at the top and 2 pixels at the bottom. If you really want to be able to get on brand and pixel perfect, this is going to let you do that. Terry, I think I just set these up as margin above it. Remember margin. So margin, how it works, like with a box, a container, margin is going to be the spacing of around it. So any elements before or after, or potentially to the side, whereas padding is going to be inside of it. So if you have super big padding, like let's say we have 100 pixels of padding, now we've got a lot of space at the top. So yeah, it's all pretty easy to just play around with and experiment with here. And you know what we'll do for the sponsor? We'll make it centered. Let's just click content alignment is centered, and now the text is centered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this dynamic. I'm going to load it into ConvertKit, and then I want to hear from you to see what else I can cover or questions you might have. And I'll also show you quickly how a widget will work. But let's make this dynamic first. So to make this dynamic, what we have here is we have this bit, which is this is the weekly update, which is dynamic content. And then we have the name of the sponsor, and we also need a link to the sponsor. So what I'm thinking is we need some text for the weekly update, because that's separate from the actual email content itself. We need the name of a sponsor. And you know what? I'm going to put a picture too. We'll put an image of this sponsor. And what I'll do is I'll give it some padding. So let's give it a bit of space. And I'm going to, I'll show you how we're going to populate that in a second. So we're going to have their logo at the top also. And let's just get everything nice and centered. Cool. All right. So we have weekly update, sponsor logo, sponsor name, sponsor URL or a link. So what we're going to do is we're going to click this meta tab. So what this meta tab lets you do is this is where you set up those variables that allow the emails you're writing to change stuff in the template. So let me just add these real quick. So we have the intro, the quick update, we'll call it. And we're going to make that formatted text. We'll give it some default. So this is welcome to this week's edition. So for the purpose of previewing, it's useful to have some default text or default content. We have the sponsor logo, which this one is an image. And we're going to grab the ConvertKit logo.
This is a live Zoom call though, so I'm
Oh, sorry.
I can go outside.
Who's over it?
Like those puffy white clouds.
Yeah,
You can
puffy white
smell
clouds.
the wind blossoms for the first time.
I'm gonna come out whenever this ends.
Okay, I think that was Danny. Yeah, I'm gonna actually use the template in a second, Casey, and ConvertKit once I get this all set up. Okay, so we have the logo, we have the sponsor name, which is going to be ConvertKit, and then we have a URL. So you can do all this really nice, like being able to set up these really nice defined placeholders that I'm going to show you in a second how when you do this, setting up this stuff up and using it again and again becomes really, really easy. So default value here, we'll just go to convertkit.com. Cool. All right, so that gives us what we need. So now I just need to get these variables I've defined into my template. So this text is no longer going to be static. We're going to make this quick update. So if I preview now, you'll see welcome to this week's edition. So now it's doing that. This image here, I'm going to click this the icon here for the meta variables and choose the sponsor logo. So there's ConvertKit. We're going to now choose, I'm going to replace where it says name of the sponsor. Oop. So can I click on it? Of course, I'm having a weird issue with this, but I don't need it. Okay, so today's edition sponsored by name, or actually we want, what did I call that? Sponsor name, I believe. And then I'm going to make this a link. And that's going to link to sponsor URL. So I know this part here, there's going to be room for optimization where it'll automatically figure this out. So you don't need to type these curly brackets. But at the current state of what I have, what I've built in Palladio, you need to just type it manually, but it's really just simple. It's just the name of the meta variable you created, wrapped or surrounded by these curly brackets. Okay, so now when we preview this, why is it? Oh, that didn't save. That was my issue. Okay, give me a second. I just changed this editor here the other day, so I might have just found myself a fun little bug. Let me just try this again. And I do try to be very quick about fixing any issues that come up. So I am the only person who builds it, markets it, and supports it. So if you write in saying, hey, this broke, I try to usually same day get it fixed, but it is getting a lot better with that. So cool, there we go. So today's issue is sponsored by ConvertKit. And now we have that. So now we have all the dynamic stuff in place. Now let's actually get this into ConvertKit and let's look at how we'll use it. So I'm going to click add to ConvertKit. And now it's going to walk me through what to do. So what it did here, all this ugly code right here, which is HTML mixed with CSS mixed with Liquid, it does for you. So you don't actually need to worry about this. All you need to do is click the blue button. That's going to put it on your clipboard. And then it's going to say, hey, here's what you need to do. I'm going to show you what to do because I know what to do. So you're going to go to your email templates area. I'm going to click new email template. I'm going to say import code. Click this link down here and then just paste in what's on my clipboard. So all this stuff Palladio just created for me. It's all mobile responsive. It does all the Liquid stuff. It does it all for me. So, Palladio test, I'll call it that. And then I'm going to create a broadcast using that. So we'll create a broadcast. We call this Palladio test. So it's using now the text only default template, but we want to use the Palladio test template. So do that, let it save, and then reload. So one annoying thing about ConvertKit is when you change a template, it actually doesn't actually do it until you refresh the page. So that's one thing to keep in mind here. Okay, so you'll see all the default content that I set up in the meta area is here, but that's fine because this is going to be replaced. Okay, so once this is in, the workflow now to use it would be you add it in once. So that add to ConvertKit bit, that you only need to do that once or anytime you change anything in the template. So if you get a new logo or your boss wants you to make the logo bigger, designer joke there, you'd go into Palladio and do it, and then just click add to ConvertKit, and then now update that email template instead of creating a new one. But generally speaking, I don't, my email template rarely changes, so I don't actually need to ever do that, what I just showed you, unless I change something. But I do need to use it, right? So you can create, technically in Palladio, you can create a template that's normal, that just has an email content area, like this bit down here, with no dynamic content, with no meta content. You can do that. And then it becomes really easy. All you need to do is just create an email and ConvertKit, use the Palladio template you loaded in, and just start typing. But if you have dynamic content, like what I showed you here, you're going to need to jump quickly back into Palladio whenever you're going to create a new email. So I'm going to create this new email. I'm in my template in Palladio. I'm going to click use an email. And now we have these 4 different things that let me change for this edition the content of this. So when Justin Moore, for instance, has his thing where he has like, this is my live stream for the week, or these are the things I'm promoting for the week, or these are my quick updates, he's using this interface and loading it on quickly there. So my update. So, hey, this is my first email. And then we need a logo. Don't we use a ConvertKit logo again? Company logo. Let me just find a random company logo. That looks nice. Let me just save this to my desktop. Okay, so we have a company logo. So we're going to upload that. And then that's uploaded. I'm going to say random company, and their URL is random company. So one cool thing too about if you're using Palladio URLs, you can actually set custom fields and set tags, even fire off webhooks automatically when these are clicked. So I could say like, oh, and I want to add this tag, or I want to also set this custom field when this URL is clicked. So click next. It's going to give you a little preview of what this looks like. So, hey, this is my first email, their logo, blah, 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 blah. Click the blue button again. And now go into ConvertKit where it says add content, just paste. And then it says your content goes here. And this is where you write your actual email content. So when I preview this, now we see the custom weekly update thing up here, the call out, which would show if they're a customer, which if I preview this for a non-customer, so if I preview this for me at Brennan Dunn, which is not a customer, you'll notice that goes, oh, I guess there's one thing I forgot to do, which I'll do in a second, but I accidentally made it to the sponsor area where the sponsor call out shows up only if you're a customer, which doesn't make sense. But yeah, that's looking though generally how we want it to look, right? So what again, my flow was I did one and done, add the template to ConvertKit. I only need to update that if I ever change anything about the template, if I change the logo or whatever else. Then when I'm doing the email every week, I just go and I set the various placeholders. And then I load that in. And then I generally author all the emails using the normal ConvertKit editor right here. And that's it. And that's basically the flow. And the one thing I wanted to change was before, I'm going to show you now the create and sell flow that I use, because I think it'll be probably a lot more helpful to see it actually used with a real thing that I've actually spent some time creating. Yes, Neville, the dash bit makes it inline liquid, which won't give you all that crazy white space stuff. It does that automatically for you. And yeah, Lee, I have thought about that actually is a request people have had where you can basically save the meta variables. That's something I'm going to do. I'm still thinking. So I'm building an email builder, which will let you basically go and create, instead of it being like kept in as a cookie or whatever, or just in memory, you'll be able to add emails and kind of author them entirely within Palladio and then just click one button to get it into ConvertKit. Ideally, that's how I'll do it, because that's, in my mind, a cleaner way. But a hybrid approach would be just basically remembering the last time you clicked use an email. Okay, so the one thing I want to change here is this condition here doesn't make sense. Subscriber tags contains customer. Now, what we should do is say if sponsor name, which is one of the variables I defined. So you'll notice it automatically gives you all your meta variables here. So if sponsor name is set. Simple. So if I don't put in a sponsor name when I click use an email, presumably I'm also not going to put in a sponsor logo or a sponsor URL. Then it won't show the sponsor block. So again, it becomes really, really easy to just be able to, when you click use an email, it's like, oh, I don't have a sponsor. So I'm going to click don't use. Now I just have an update, and then it won't show the sponsor thing. So let me show you real quick my process for doing this with Create and Sell. Okay, so I'm going to go into now Create and Sell, and I'm going to switch over to that. And if you have any questions, feel free to just dump them in the chat, and then I'll cover them in a second. So again, here's my newsletter. I have this one, which looks like that. And then I have a second one, which is more of a plain one, which is just more minimal and simple. And one thing too, if you use Palladio, you can actually see exactly, oh, I need to fix that. That looks horrible. I didn't make this one mobile or responsive. I just set up this new plain one, and I just called myself out for not testing it thoroughly. But you can see here, normally, this gives you the mobile view. So you can see how things look different. And you can also, if you want, hide and who came off here. 1 second. Wish there was an easier way to Zoom to do this. Sorry, everyone. Okay, I don't know who did it. Anyway, with Palladio, when you're in mobile, you can also do cool stuff like hide the logo when they're on mobile, or show it if they're on desktop, or hide this area, or hide this sponsor thing if they're on mobile. Not that you necessarily want to do that. I'm not advocating ever hiding your logo on mobile, but usually things like maybe you want to have a certain padding that is only on mobile, whereas desktop wouldn't do it that way. That's another thing. If you with the ConvertKit editor, at least as it is today, they have no way of you having any configuration over responsive anything. Cool. All right. So let me show you how I use it. So writing a new email. All right. I need a quote. So Palladio is cool. Brennan, I have my headline. Thanks for coming out tonight. My little content at the top. Thank you. Thanks so much. Blah, 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 blah. Another thing is Palladio has this concept of repeaters. So you'll notice I have the highlights area of my newsletter. All I'm doing is I'm saying highlight 1 is ABC. Highlight 2 is XYZ. Highlight 3 is 1, 2, 3. My main headline. So really, you all are awesome. Subheadline, you really, really are. And I could also define, do I want to show the call to action? So maybe I don't want to have the little dynamic call to action I have in the footer. I could set that to false, but I'll show it. Click next. This is basically what it's going to look like. It's going to look like this. So it just took all that information. It gives me a little preview. And then that looks good. So I'm going to copy this, go into my thing, click new broadcast, choose my there it is, CS Foundations Weekly. And I don't know why it doesn't. I need to update the main template to. Okay, so here's this, and then where it says add content. Unfortunately, ConvertKit, because this is where we put the email content block. That means all the typing you do, even the pasting of that code it gave you, needs to be done down here. So I'm just going to go and paste, puts it all in. So you'll notice it wrote all this liquid code for me. And now, blah, 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 blah. I can click preview, and here's all of my stuff. So this is the dynamic call to action. All that stuff is being done. And you can see how it's very sectioned. And all I had to do was, spend a few minutes setting it up here and then just copying what it gave me, and it plopped it all structurally into where it needs to be. So does that all make sense so far to everyone? I know we only have about 10 minutes left. I'm going to be mindful of time. Okay, Terry, great question about the image upload. So one thing I'd recommend, this is what I do. So I actually don't recommend using always Palladio to upload images, because it's just, I don't have any of the image compression stuff going on like ConvertKit has, for better or worse, because sometimes ConvertKit, I think, over compresses. But what I usually do is, let's say I want to put a, actually, this is a good time to show this. So I have a, this photo frame widget. So I'll quickly show widgets. So this photo frame one that allows me to have like 2 up photo thingies. If I click use an email, I need 2 photos, right? I could upload them here, but I actually prefer uploading it with ConvertKit. So do it here. So you'll notice in my last email, I had these like sofa things about when my kid scribbled on our sofa. So I'm just going to add these real quick to the email. So here they are. This is ConvertKit uploaded. I'm going to right click, do copy image link. And then over here, I'm just going to paste that in here. And likewise for the other one, copy image link. So this is the ConvertKit uploaded photo. And there that is. So now I'm going to copy this. And now I'm going to get rid of the things I just added. I'm not going to use a ConvertKit embed. And let's say I want to put up between this text, that widget. So I just paste in, there's the photo frame widget. And now when I preview, there it is. So now we have the nice 2 up at different kind of angles or whatever images. But I would recommend uploading images, let them be uploaded with ConvertKit, let them host it, and then just get the URL of the image by right clicking on it, and then just drop that into Palladio. That's the better Okay, I think there's been a few questions. Jenny, yes, the recording, I am recording this. So I'm going to be emailing it out afterward. Okay, so Lee, I already answered the thing about the saving of meta variables. Neville, yep. So it creates optimized liquid for you. So there shouldn't be any weird like white space issues. Okay, so yeah, a good question. So what point is it more appropriate to use widgets versus just designing the full template? So I actually think for things like if I've backtracked a bit on this. So I used to think, yeah, the signature in an email should be a widget, and it actually is here. This is a widget, but it should only really be a widget if the plain template, notice it uses the same signature. So for the fact that these two templates use the same exact signature, it should be a widget, because now that if I ever want to change this, I update the widget for the signature once, and all the templates that embed it get updated automatically. But if you only plan on ever using it in that one email template as part of the template, widgets might be a bit overkill. I mean, it's not gonna make your email send slower or anything like that. But it just might be a bit excessive to do it that way. And you can also set it up here, and then let's say you do some stuff you like. So like this area. If you click this little arrow thingy here, notice it says turn this container into a new widget. So you can actually create it here. Click that button, it'll ask you for the name, and then it'll create a widget for it automatically. So I actually prefer creating widgets actually in the email template itself, so I can see how it fits alongside everything else, and then I extract it into a widget itself. And yeah, the only other Danny, can you clarify that? Do you mean about the thing I just showed where we uploaded the image in ConvertKit? Yeah, so when you upload an image in ConvertKit, they do a bunch of image compression, where if you upload like a 5 megabyte image, it'll get compressed down, and because a mobile phone doesn't want to download a 5 megabyte image, so they'll compress it automatically for you. I don't have anything fancy like that. Whatever you upload is what gets uploaded. So if you're already compressing and optimizing images on your end before uploading it to Palladio, have at it. But a lot of the times I'm like getting something from my phone, which is going to be a massive image. And if I were to upload that into Palladio, it'd be like a giant image, which would look nice, but it might be a little slow to load. So hopefully that makes sense, Danny. Yep, no worries. So Ricardo, yeah. So if you have an evergreen newsletter, how do you set up those meta variables? Is that, yeah, so I'll show you my evergreen newsletter that I use that too. So here's my evergreen newsletter. And as you can see, it's the same thing. It's basically, there's zero difference conceptually about a sequence email or a broadcast email. So I've got all the Palladio generated stuff where this evergreen newsletter ends up having all of this stuff. So yeah, there's really no conceptual difference between the two. Yep, cool. So hopefully I know I went quick. I realized that I didn't get into all the nitty-gritty details. I wanted to just show you quickly kind of a start to finish, like the dynamic static thing. I think is a big thing that a lot of people who try out Palladio, I've seen people go into like the template editor and write their entire email in it, which is cool, but that's not how it should be used. What I saw one customer actually go and like every time they send a broadcast, they would re-export it to ConvertKit and update the email template, that the email template has the content of the email too in it. So that was their workflow. And I saw that. I was like, oh God, I failed when it came to like making this obvious and making this clear. So there's stuff I still do want to do to make this a lot more easy. And I'm hoping with these kind of somewhat regular events I do like this, that'll help. But I think the static dynamic thing is a big, once that makes sense, everything starts to click. That's how I look at all my emails now, is like what's static, what's not. And then I wanted to just show you kind of a quick, I know the email template we created tonight was really ugly, but I didn't put any time or thought into it. But you know, given some love and attention, you can actually make it look really, really nice. And then I wanted to the big thing was bring it in and ConvertKit in this case, and then using it there and show you the process of using it for like every week's email or whatever else. Cool. Well, glad it looks like this is making sense for everyone. I'm really happy about that, because again, I wasn't sure how many people here have actually used Palladio, how many haven't. If you've ever gone in the app before, this is probably kind of overwhelmed, but potentially if you have gone into the app before, you might have already been overwhelmed. So I know a lot of people want me to really simplify this and make it kind of baby easy, but I love tools like Webflow where I can just geek out. Like if I want easy, I'm going to use the built-in ConvertKit templates, to be honest. But I want to be able to say, I want exactly 2 pixels of border at the top of this thing. So that's what I tried to achieve with this, with the stuff you can see on the right when it comes to font settings. And you can even change stuff like what should links look like, how for lists, how much margin padding should be between each list item. So there's a lot of stuff you can do that I'm not saying like there's anything wrong with the ConvertKit email templates and stuff. I just think for me, I like having this kind of structure where I have like these placeholder bits where I can just plop in stuff and have it really dialed in. So that's why I created Palladio. So yeah. You can style buttons. You can put shadows on them. You can put borders on them. You can do whatever. Marcia, resources on newsletter design tips. There's a website called Really Good Emails that it's not really a resource of like design tips, but it's a really nice, like it's mainly e-commerce, to be honest, but they from like a design point of view, it's nice to kind of just see what they've got from like an inspiration point of view. But yeah, I think, I mean, to be honest, like if you've done the work of like, you have a website and you've got like a brand colors and you've got like your logo and all that stuff, having that mirrored in your email in a nice, tasteful way. I don't like excessively designed things, but I think that the emails that get sent here, where you have these kind of defined structures, do perform better. And when you look at like, you know, I mean, when it comes to like the open rates have gone down a bit lately because I'm using Upscribe now to get a lot of leads, which is good, but it's not the highest of qualities. But you know, I mean, traditionally I'm getting you know, a 60% open rate, which is great. I think open rates have everything to do with the content, and very like there's nothing that says if you put a background color in a box in an email that email platforms or like Gmail are going to start flagging it as spam or anything like that. So yeah, I think the big thing, like I talked about in the slides earlier, is just thinking about like user experience. I mean, when I get an email and I am faced with a wall of text, especially now that people are doing like all these sponsor things and then promoting their own stuff and like, here's links and here's this and here's that. I mean, there's some stuff you can do out of the box with rich text, like using emojis craftfully and headings to like create sections, but I don't know. I like having a bit more polish than that. So, cool. Any other questions before we break for the evening? And is there any, like, I want to do more of these if you all want to come to more of these. where I could get into like widget stuff. I can get into more of the liquid stuff. I mean, I'm happy to do whatever you want me to do. So just let me know maybe in the chat real quick, like what you'd like me to talk about next time. Neville, quickly while that comes through, my book, This Is Personal, comes out in October. So I'm going to be putting together the opt-in type page for that soon. You could actually already pre-order it on Amazon and stuff and other sellers, but it comes out in October. Cool. Okay, I'm going to look at it. I'm glad to see that people have liked this. Let me just see if there's anything. So evergreen stuff, widgets, awesome. Liquid for surveys. Yeah, there's a lot of things I'm doing now. Like this is kind of out of scope for tonight, but I think this might be useful. So my offer funnel is a blank widget where when you look at the meta, so you'll notice the little stuff I have at the bottom of my emails of like the master and ConvertKit callouts or the right master callouts or whatever. I've loaded them all here. So you can see here is master and ConvertKit. Here's a variation of master and ConvertKit. Here's a Palladio callout. And all of these are automatically configured to not go if you've already bought Palladio or master and ConvertKit or whatever else. Here's a right message one. So what's really cool about this, what I'm getting at is if I ever want to change up my offers, I just go and like tweak it here. I add a new one, I change the text, and then I just add this widget back into ConvertKit. So this is a content snippet. You can see there's no stuff that being shown. It's all liquid being generated for me through Palladio. And so this is it's weird. It's a widget that doesn't actually show anything. It's content snippet that when included doesn't show anything, but it crunches a bunch of cool stuff and it defines all my different things. So then when I'm looking at the email template and you see this thing at the bottom, that thing, that is randomly being generated from that master list based on the segmentation I have about you. And it's all done thanks to that invisible widget. So I can get into that stuff too. I mean, that's a bit more advanced. Danny, hey, oh, that's separate. Or that's a direct message. Cool. Would you reference a content snippet? Okay, so let me quickly talk about content snippet stuff. So who has had the issue? Let me just do this real quick. I cringe doing this, but okay. So I'm going to call this like attempt at inline. This is cool or something, right? See you, Jason. So this will only take a second, then I promise I'll let you go. So imagine you want to have like, you use ConvertKit's snippet adder thingy, and then go to attempt to inline. Okay, can I get to it? Yeah. So snippet attempt to inline. So if I were to, let's say I want to put that in a sentence. For a lot of you know what's about to happen. Where is it? Oh, there it is. I did it up here. You'll notice it's not actually in the sentence. So ConvertKit snippets annoyingly force line breaks above and below. So the way that I've done this, which is really weird, but it's when you understand how it works, it's actually really cool. When you look at the code being generated for a widget, so here's the photo frame one. It's actually capturing a bunch. It's capturing nothing. So I call it temp. But all the stuff that happens in here, ConvertKit sees, and it's like nothing actually is being output at all. Like there's nothing being emitted from this content snippet. So it's not actually going to show anything. But it's actually defining a variable, a liquid variable called output. Every content snippet defines output. So when you use this in an email, so when I go to say use this, you'll notice here what it's doing is whenever you embed a widget, it is doing a bunch of crafty liquid stuff that confuses the heck out of ConvertKit, but it works because it grabs the widget or the content snippet. It then says, is there any output? If it's, is there any output? Or is there output, I should say, is a better way of phrasing this. If so, output that. And the benefit there is that it lets you do fun stuff like inline things where you're not having these stupid line breaks or whatever else. So just a lot of that. We can go deep on this stuff, and I'd love to go deep on this stuff because I think I've been trying to get the ConvertKit team to not do content snippets the way they did. That's not the case. So this is my workaround for that. Yeah. So the great question about the Master and ConvertKit changes. So with Create and Sell Pro, which is basically I'm changing the name / retiring Master and ConvertKit and making it this new thing, which can give you a little preview if you want to. Oh wait, I need to do it in Chrome. If you have a second, you want to see what I'm getting toward. Hopefully, I don't have any local code that will break this. Okay, so give me 1 second. Let me just delete what I've got in the database for this. So basically, for those who are questioning what I'm talking about here, I'm Create and Sell Pro is going to be Master and ConvertKit plus a lot of other stuff like things on designing great emails. It's going to be a path, which is going to be just basically the Palladio documentation. So what's going to be cool about this is like when you join Palladio, you get this learning path unlocked, but all the other stuff, if you don't have Master and ConvertKit, will be grayed out. And then you can just kind of unlock things, but Master and ConvertKit people basically have everything. But the thing I'm most proud of is going to be this. So you can go through like defined paths, like growing your list, personalizing your emails, ConvertKit mastery, Black Friday stuff, whatever. Or you can say, I want to do a custom path where I currently use ActiveCampaign. I do not plan on sticking with them. I'm going to switch to ConvertKit. I am up and running on ActiveCampaign. I sell these things. You can go in and plug in all this stuff. I'm not going to do it all, but it's basically going to ask you stuff about like, how do you get subscribers on your list? And do you do this? Do you send a weekly newsletter? Do you do blah, 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 blah? And then what it's going to do is it's going to generate a custom course effectively for you. So you can see here, like migrating to ConvertKit from ActiveCampaign. What's cool about this is I just need to go in and record one lesson on here's how to go into ActiveCampaign and export your list as a CSV. And then the normal migrate to ConvertKit stuff will be the same, the importing of that CSV. So what I'm really excited about this is that if you say I make money with sponsorships, I don't really care too much about personalization. This is my objective, this is my goal, whatever. It'll basically take of the currently 25 hours of content I've recorded and basically come up with a custom course for you with milestones, with action items, which action items are going to be basically like, things you can, like it'll have tasks, like you learn conceptually and then you do it. And it's going to also have, I've replicated, I can't show this yet, but I recreated the visual automation builder in ConvertKit. So you'll be able to go and say it's on like building an offer funnel. You can go in the courseware and build it and simulate it and actually run test subscribers through it and see what would happen before you actually do anything in ConvertKit. And the benefit there is that you don't need to worry about screwing something up and spamming your entire list because you messed something up when trying it out. So you can actually test things within the courseware. So yeah, I'm super, this is basically what I've been working on. Like, this is why I don't tweet anywhere really. I've just been working on this stuff nonstop. And yeah, should be out in the summer, but super, super excited to see what you all think of this. But yeah, there's gonna be deep integrations with Palladio and this. Because what I just showed you with that offer funnel builder, you're literally going to be able to say, like, you learn about conceptually how an offer funnel works, and then quick API calls done. And it's like, cool, now load, like, map out your offer funnel here. I write all the code for you if you want. I mean, I'm still going to teach you Liquid if you want to learn Liquid, but my goal is to have so many abstractions that'll let you just visually be able to say what you want done. And then it'll do all the annoying Liquidy stuff for you. Yeah, I don't think I've had people already say, like, can you not open source this, but like SaaSify this? I already run one software company, two software companies now, so don't know about that. Cool. So sorry about the cough, by the way. And in the date, this I have, my goal is July. I'm going to try to get it out earlier though, but goal right now is to launch this in July. Cool. Well, this has been a lot of fun. If there's any closing questions, you can ask now, or you can always email me. I'm glad this was fun, and email me too. Like I got some ideas on what I'll cover next time, but if you want to hear something, if you want like super specific, like Brendan, do this, just drop me a note. And then I'm going to put together a little content plan for these.
Very helpful, Brendan. Thank you very much.
Of course. Thanks, Neville. All right. Well, I'm going to get to bed. Yeah, it's been a long day and it's finally the weekend. All right, everyone. Well, have a great rest of your day. Happy St. Paddy's Day to those. I guess everyone celebrates it, right?
Thanks, guys.
And I will hopefully see you all next time.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.